My guest is Dr. Ryan Hayton, who is a surgeon, head of surgery at Malawi Hospital in Malawi, Africa. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Now, we're here on the campus of Loma Linda, slightly different hospital environment to where you're working, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. I work at Malawi Adventist Hospital. It's in southern rural Malawi. Malawi is a very poor country, one of the poorest in the world, and our hospital is an hour outside the city, oftentimes on a very bad road to get there. Quite a bit different than Loma Linda.
Right. Now, we were talking earlier and you told me how many surgeons there were when you first arrived there?
Yeah, when I arrived in Malawi, there were 12 surgeons for 17 million people in the country. It's about 1.3 million patients for each surgeon. It was pretty low numbers compared to what the World Health Organization or other places would recommend.
Amazing. Now, why did you decide to go to serve in Malawi?
Well, I chose to serve as a doctor and as a missionary because of the example of my father and my history in my family. But while I was here at Loma Linda, I was recruited and signed up for the Deferred Mission Appointee program. And as a DMA, it was asked of me to go as a missionary, and I thought that that was the right thing for me in my life.
So the DMA program is a program that encourages students to think about mission service, right?
Absolutely. And there are programs in the Adventist Church for all different specialties. For dentists and doctors, it's called Deferred Mission Appointee.
Wonderful. Now, what have been some of the challenges you have faced working at the hospital?
Well, working at the hospital, we've been faced with really low resources in Malawi, both from a logistical and financial standpoint. In low and middle income countries like Malawi, some of the challenges that you incur are different than here, but we still give as good of health care as we possibly can in the situation.
Now, what sort of cases do you see on a daily basis?
I'm a surgeon, so we deal with traumas, cancer, all sorts of other surgical problems. We have a very busy surgical service at Malawi. We do over 2,000 cases each year.
Amazing. Now, when I grew up as a kid, we in family worship would always pray for the missionaries. Do you sometimes get the sense that missionaries aren't as high up on the agenda of people's prayer lives, or maybe they even forget about you? Do you ever feel that way?
We do sometimes feel like the mission work of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is possibly overlooked or underappreciated, and I think that that is throughout the whole world. I do think that there's a huge need still for missionaries, medical missionaries and others. I think that the need is out there, and people absolutely can find a place for themselves in missions. I think that everybody has a place in missions.
Now, some people would say, well, Dr. Ryan, you're doing a wonderful work, but you go over there for a limited period of time, you come back, and there's no ongoing effect. How do you answer that?
Well, it is true that there have been a long line of missionary doctors like my father and great-grandfather who came, worked for a few years, and then left. And I think that several years ago we forged a new way to start to train African doctors to be compassionate and competent surgeons. So through Pan-Africa Academy of Christian Surgeons, we were able to start a training program that's a postgraduate surgical training program at Malawi, getting the next generation of missionary surgeons ready from Africa.
Wonderful. Now, Malawi is owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. How is it managed? How is it run?
So it's owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but managed in a joint effort through the Adventist Church as well as Adventist Health International, which is a subsidiary of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay, so AHI is an organization that runs this hospital and others?
Yeah, so there's many hospitals around the world that AHI helps to manage. And they bring in logistical support as well as support for those of us who are trying to do a good work and need some types of supplies as well as donations.
What have been, tell me a highlight of your time at Malawi. What has brought you a moment where you say, yeah, it was worth being here?
I would say for several years, about 4 years, I was working on my own as the only surgeon at the hospital and was quite burned out and saw, like, what's the future? Am I just going to be here and work my fingers to the bone, but in the end have nothing to show at this hospital for what I've done? And now looking back, starting education to train African doctors has been the greatest joy. It really brings me a purpose and has made me feel like what I'm doing there is worth it.
Wonderful. Now, you have a family, you have children. What do they do? How old are they?
So my wife is Charlene, and we have 3 children, 10, 8, and 5.
Oh, wow.
And they're growing up in the middle of Africa in a beautiful environment. They go to school there that's a collaborative homeschool taught by a student missionary, and they really enjoy living there.
Yeah, so you grew up for several years when you were a kid on the same campus, right?
Yeah, so I went to the same school as where my children go now, and enjoyed growing up there, and that was one of the impetuses for me to go back as an adult, as a missionary.
Yeah. Looking to the future, what are your hopes for Malamulo?
My hopes is that Malamulo will start a trajectory for the Adventist Church, for the missions of the Adventist Church to be a place of training, a place to not only to do good healthcare, but also to train people who can take our places, to make it more sustainable.
And a young person who's watching this thinking, maybe I'd like to serve, but I'm not sure if I'm needed, what would you advise?
I'd advise, if you're young, to go on a short-term mission trip and see the world, see where the need is. And also, God needs willing individuals who are willing to serve and sacrifice. And I do think in a strong way that there is a big need for new and young missionaries, as well as those who are willing to serve on a short-term as well as long-term basis.
Dr. Ryan, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Absolutely.
And please pray for Ryan and his family and other medical missionaries all around the world as they encounter many challenges, but many joys as well.